Well, welcome back, class. It's been a few weeks since we've been together, and we want to welcome as well our other guests who are with us today. And in a very special way, we want to thank Jill Jones for making the trip with our speaker today, her husband, Paul Jones. So welcome back. Hope everybody's doing well. You have been receiving, quite frankly, a masterclass in leadership these last 4 sessions we've had together. And the next 4 will be equally, if not more so, exhilarating, starting today. Our speaker that I'll introduce to you is someone who I've just really come to know and admire for a number of years. Paul Jones is now a retired president, chairman, CEO, and an independent board director in the corporate world. He served as an independent board director for Tuesday Morning Corporation, which is a publicly traded off-price retail chain. He also served as an independent board director for JCPenney Corporation. In 2017, Paul Jones retired as the CEO of Payless Shoes. He joined Payless in October 2012 as the CEO, bringing more than 25 years of distinguished leadership, management experience, and operating experience in the value retail segment. Mr. Jones was responsible for developing and driving the execution of a global strategic business initiative, including repositioning of the merchandise and marketing strategies across North America, international store growth across more than 30 countries, and the development of full omnichannel business capabilities and customer experience. Payless at the time was the largest vertically integrated footwear retailer in the Western Hemisphere, operating over 4,300 stores across the globe and generating over $2.3 billion in annual sales, and with over 28,000 employees. Payless was the number 2 seller of footwear units to women and children in the United States market, designing, sourcing, manufacturing, and selling over 120 million pairs annually. Prior to joining Payless, Mr. Jones served as the president, chairman, and CEO for Shopko Stores from 2009 to 2012, where he had previously held the role of president and chief merchandising officer after joining the company. While leading Shopko, Jones spearheaded the brand's successful repositioning and turnaround and executed the acquisition and conversion of 170 Pamita stores to a new small store retail concept serving rural markets called Shopko Hometown. He was also responsible for the launch and growth of Shopko's e-commerce platform and customer loyalty program. Shopko Stores was a regional discount department store that also offered premier pharmacy and optical services. Shopko operated over 330 stores in 21 states, generating $3 billion in annual revenue with over 12,000 employees. Mr. Jones' prior career highlights include serving in leadership and merchandising roles at Kohl's department store during the explosive growth of Kohl's from 1997 to 2004, and at May department stores, where he started his retail career in 1986 and served for 12 years. I believe also at Nike, right? Did you do some work early on in your career at Nike in Oregon, at their headquarters in Oregon? Paul Jones serves as a trustee on the Franciscan University of Steubenville's Board of Trustees. He serves on the Finance, Academic Affairs, and Integrity and Truth Committees. Mr. Jones also served as chairman of the Presidential Hiring and Transition Committee at Franciscan University. He has his past nonprofit service includes numerous leadership roles on nonprofit boards and councils for the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, the Diocese of Green Bay, Wisconsin, the HSHS St. Vincent Hospital in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and at Mount St. Mary's University in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Mr. Jones holds a bachelor's degree in business, finance, and economics from Mount St. Mary's University and an MBA from the University of Oregon. Now, a little known fact, Mr. Jones and I went to the same high school, and he's got a couple of years on me. However, his legend preceded himself. So really a pleasure for me to introduce to you today, Mr. Paul Jones. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Guys, it really, first of all, I just want to thank Marco for Dr. Clark for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. I'm very passionate about the topic that we're going to talk about and have really a very unique perspective given my experience. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you because I remember so vividly being young person in school, curious about a lot of these topics more from a practical standpoint. How do some of these work and how do the senior people sometimes think? But I'm just very grateful to have received this invitation. So full disclosure, my Catholic faith is central to who I am and to everything that I do. I'm not one of these people that compartmentalizes my Catholic faith, my personal life, and my professional life. I strive and I struggle to live out my faith in a way that clearly identifies me as a follower of Jesus Christ. And if I can do it well enough, often enough, not always, but if I can, hopefully I can draw other people into a deeper conversion and conviction to practice their faith as well. And I say it's sometimes it's an opportunity. I had a priest tell me one time through periods of struggle in my career, particularly the last 10 years that were so laden with challenges, that he reminded me of, that, hey, sometimes people in the secular world who are successful or reasonably successful have a unique opportunity to evangelize through our lives, because it's important for people to know, yes, here's some schmuck who's got a reasonable level of secular success, was able to ascend into, a very senior level role, operating large companies, this kind of thing. But this person is grounded, very grounded in what truly matters, which is the roots of their Catholic faith. So it's just important for me to note that. You can't always talk a lot about it in some of the audiences. I spoke at the University of Oregon many times, at University of Nebraska, and you can't be maybe as overt about the Catholic faith part of it, but for you all, I'm taking that liberty. So the first thing I want to do, because I'm talking about leading through adversity and challenges, and my favorite scriptural passage from that I have always meditated upon, contemplated, focused on, that it just resonates so strongly with me, given this context and through the deep adversity that I've experienced periodically. It's from Matthew 14:23. And after he had dismissed the crowds, this is just following the multiplication of loaves and fishes. After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far off from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking on the water toward them on sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So it's just, I'm always mindful of that passage. I encourage you to remember that passage when you get into circumstances of extreme or any adversity, fear, anxiety, It's just, Jesus he's always there. He's always there in that gospel story. He's there, but you know what? Because of the wind, because of the waves, because of the turmoil and chaos, they just don't recognize his presence. So it's something that I'm always mindful of, even though we don't recognize him. And the reason we don't recognize him, just like with Peter, is why? Because I'm consumed with the adversity. I'm consumed with the storm around me, the chaos, my own anxiety and fear. And that brings me back to saying, oh, nope, remember, he's here. Focus on him. Focus on him. It'll be okay. So it has been that way for my entire life and career, or most of it, that through the grace of two people, Christ and that beautiful woman that's sitting about halfway back in the audience here, my wife, Jill. So I also want to just make this quote. Father Raoul Plus, who is a French Jesuit priest and author from the late 1800s, first half of the 19th century, wrote, "When trial is sent to us, it is more often difficult than at other times to know how to be thankful to God. We need to acquire sufficient supernatural strength in order to believe that God remains a father when he makes us feel the weight of the cross. Behind the suffering that occupies the foreground, we must learn to discover the heart of the one who by this trial wishes to either make us grow more spiritually, to permit us to expiate our sins, or to identify us more with his divine Son and make us participate more fully in redemption." So it's always important to remember that. The adversity that we are thrown, God doesn't make it happen, he allows it to happen. And there's a deeper meaning to it. There's a purpose to that adversity. I have found that in my own life. The most adverse times are the times my faith life has grown the most dramatically, the times that I felt the most connected to God. So I believe with my deepest conviction that my faith that God does have a plan for my life, that he is the one in control. And if I can just stay focused on him, and do my best to cooperate and trust him, his plan for my life will be achieved. So that's the scriptural part of my presentation. So now you can say, man, I didn't think this was a theology class. I thought this was about leadership. They're not mutually exclusive. So there are many ways and styles to lead, a variety of very different leadership methods, styles can and do produce outstanding results. But they may not, and there are many, many examples of that, of leaders who are tenacious and driven and smart and experienced, and they get great results. But they may not be effective in terms of also preserving and elevating the dignity and respect of individuals being led. So I'm one that believes that truly effective leadership, and I've experienced this and observed it my entire life, truly effective leadership cannot be achieved without also simultaneously fostering and elevating human dignity, esteem, and respect with those people that we're charged with leading. There are many poor character, low integrity leaders who get great results, but at what cost? And I quote Matthew 16:26, "What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and to lose his very soul?" It's so true. What does it matter if you win the championship? What does it matter if your company is incredibly successful if you're doing it beating down the people, disrespecting their dignity, and causing people to be cast down? So my objective today is to share with you from my personal experience and to give you some perspective and insight into my particular learnings on effective leadership, that also respects and elevates human dignity, but especially under conditions of severe adversity, chaos, disruption, and very challenging circumstances. Leading in the modern era, in today's world, is perhaps more challenging than ever before due to several emerging cultural dynamics. We all probably are familiar with what they are. One is the rapid change and the dramatic impact of technology and technological advances. Two, the shifting cultural and societal values that result in deep divisions that are arising throughout our nation and the world. Political divide, political polarization, secularization of society, distrust of society's systems, institutions and structures, globalization, declining confidence. So that's two. Three is an increase in global complexity. And for my industry, the retail industry, that complexity was, on a global scale, had to do with things around sourcing issues, transportation, supply chain, material costs, material shortages, exchange rates, geopolitical disruptions, natural disasters, trade agreements, and the speed with which information and misinformation travels and the reach of that information makes it very, very challenging for leaders in today's world. Leaders must be more mindful, having a heightened awareness, being more adaptable. We have to be flexible. We have to be forward-thinking and more empathetic than ever before. Leaders also have the added challenge of widespread and possibly historic levels of cultural skepticism and a lack of trust in leaders, just due to the divisions in our society, and in fairness, due to the scandals and failures of many leaders. So we have a society, particularly, unfortunately, many of our young people, very skeptical. Hang on, let me grab my water. Very skeptical about leadership. So, what does it really mean to be an effective leader? What does it mean to be an effective leader? It's having the ability to guide, inspire, unite, and influence others to achieve a vision and shared goals. A leader must not only understand the problems and the circumstances to be led through, but also must set a direction and a vision, define the culture of the organization, and then empower, motivate, and activate people to collaborate and work as a unit, and to ensure that collective strengths of all of those individuals and the talents of each individual are leveraged effectively against those objectives. An effective leader consistently demonstrates strength of character, integrity, accountability, decision-making, problem-solving skills, while also showing empathy and fairness. Effective leaders not only mobilize a group towards achieving a common objective, but they simultaneously prioritize elevating the dignity and respect of those people they're leading while achieving those objectives. Okay, so here we get into the part about what are the circumstances? What am I talking about when I say, gosh, I've had to lead through some pretty challenging times under some pretty challenging circumstances. So first I'm going to talk about I was in the retail business, the macro disruption. The retail, referred to, you can, I'm sure, Google it, the retail apocalypse. The retail apocalypse kind of, for the most part, started to manifest itself in 2010. And the retail, the seeds of it happened earlier, but the big manifestation started to come in 2010. And that was a perfect storm of challenges. Any one of the challenges would buckle or create major headwinds and obstacles for most of retail, but this was a perfect storm. And it consisted of these things. One was an era, the 1970s through 2010, of massive US retail overbuilding. We built, you see them, some of them are boarded up. So many malls, so many strip centers, so many retail outlets, so many retail stores through those 4 or 5 decades that we had massive market saturation in the US. We had over 6 times the retail square footage of our European neighbors, of Japan. Over 3 times the retail square footage per capita of Canada. That was one. So massive saturation in the retail. The dramatic events of the housing bubble burst and the financial crisis of 2007 and 8, which caused a massive pullback in consumer spending and actually a fundamental cultural change in the way consumers thought about even spending, where they moved way in the opposite direction of spending on a lot of material possessions. Third thing, an explosion of growth of consumer adoption and of scale of a new technology-driven competitor. You may be familiar with them. They're called Amazon, that revolutionized the retail industry, ruined my retail life, Amazon, but a major disruptive force. And then a massive shift and consumer movement to online. So that is the perfect storm. Amazon, just real quick for a lot of you that aren't familiar with kind of the context, Amazon added in just over 10 years, from 2010 to, or a little earlier, 2006-7 to 2017, $170 billion worth of revenue. $170 billion. That's more volume without building one store, without spending a dime of capital to build a store that the rest of us spent 25 to 60 years building. And that 170 billion, that's more than the combined revenue of Best Buy, Macy's, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Sears, which at one time was one of the largest retailers in the world, Kohl's, Nordstrom's, Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic, JCPenney, Bed Bath & Beyond, Dick's Sporting Goods, Office Depot, PetSmart, Dillard's, Foot Locker, Michaels. That's how big, now they're more than twice that size. But back in 2000, that's how big they were. They added that much business. I mean, in the old days, you'd have a competitor pop up. Oh yeah, they're doing 300 million, great. Well, we got to compete. We got to be aggressive. We'll just hold our ground. This is bigger than all of those companies. So massive. Some say, I say, it's not really even disruption. It was destruction. They destroyed the rest of us. So what's important to note about that movement of all of you guys, it's your fault, onto online shopping, is that the way the traditional retail industry was built in this country all the way up to 2010, the viability, the economics of the retail business of any brick and mortar store, it's predicated on you build a store to get a certain number of footsteps into that building. All the customers that come in that building convert to a transaction at a certain rate. Those people that convert by a certain number of units per transaction at a certain average unit retail. That math is what determines and is easy to forecast all of your sales and profitability. Traffic times conversion times average units times average unit retail equals sales and profit. It literally is that simple. But it's based, and you can take that and apply it to any trade area profile population across the country. Based on the number of people and the spend there, oh great, we can put a store there, it's going to make a great profit. And we can do that thousands of times, hundreds of times. So what do you think happens the minute that all of the levers within that building, how much you staff it, inventory it, the way you price your goods, how much it costs you to build the store, lease the land, what do you think happens when all of a sudden those footsteps that your business model, your entire economic viability is predicated on, starts declining 3 to 10% every year? What happens? All of a sudden, 3%, 4%, 5%, 7%, not just last year, this year, the next year, the next year. The model isn't viable. You can't make money. You're backpedaling, you're trying to cut your way to profitability, to reduce expenses, reduce prices. You can't do enough to offset that. And some might say, well, why didn't you just move to online? Move it to online, man. It's easy. Just build a distribution, open an internet site. I've done that. And it does help. It works. But you know what? The online profitability, and that's one of the other challenges with that $170 billion back in 2017 competitor, profit really wasn't a huge objective for that entity. They really didn't make money, Amazon, in the retail part of their business. So the reason you can't just shift everything to online is because it's extremely expensive and very low margins for even brick and mortar retailers today to run an e-commerce business. You do not make a fraction of the margin on online sales as you do in a brick and mortar sale. The cost of fulfillment, customer acquisitions, there's cannibalized sales, it's significantly greater. So those are very thin margins. The price competition is incredible. So it's not just a matter of shifting it. And still, with all the growth in online, it's still 20% of the retail business. Still 80% of the business is done in brick and mortar stores. The problem is the model and the way it's done is no longer viable. It's not profitable. So the challenges that I just framed up in traditional retail, it really continues to threaten the very existence of these brick and mortar retailers. That is why you're probably not even aware of it because you were just born, but hundreds of retailers have filed for bankruptcy and liquidated. You don't even know they existed because their stores are gone. They have shut tens of thousands of individual stores trying to get themselves more profitable. So it really is this total disruption and this chaos. It just turned the industry upside down. All right, now let's zoom in. That's the broader context, the macro challenge that I'm dealing with. Then, as Marco introduced, I go to Payless as my second role as a CEO. I did 2 CEO stints, both for 5 years. But Payless was kind of at the tail end. It was 2012 to 2017. As Marco said, again, it's one of the largest footwear retailers in the world. That 2.5 billion in revenue, 28,000 employees, 800 employees in my corporate office, over 4,300 stores on almost every state in the country and 30 other countries. As Marco alluded to, it's a mind-boggling number. We sourced and manufactured ourselves 134 million pairs of shoes. There are 350 million people in the US. That's a staggering number. 99% of American consumers were familiar with Payless shoes. About 80% of American consumers lived within 10 miles of a Payless store. As he said, we sold more shoes to women and children than anybody in the marketplace. We sold more shoes than Walmart. Anytime you can say you sold more of anything than Walmart, that's a big number. So that was Payless. I was brought in to Payless to follow a guy, and I have no hatred whatsoever. I'm just giving you the state of the circumstances that I was dealing with. But the preceding 5-6 years, I was following a guy and coming into a company that had a crisis of leadership. My predecessor, Payless, was the largest, most successful value chain. It was a value footwear chain. We sold most of our shoes $20 and below. So I followed a guy who came in, they had been bought in by the public board of Payless, who was not a value guy. He was in the luxury space. He was running Cole Haan, which was a luxury brand eventually acquired by Nike. He was a dysfunctional, narcissistic leader. I mean, the definition. There's a new definition of a narcissistic leader they could use today, but he was a really good one. And he came to Payless in 2005, came from that high-end footwear, and the first thing he did to disrespect the business model and everybody in it was not be excited about Payless, the value chain. He went and acquired another luxury footwear brand, Collective Brands, that had 4 upper tier, upper moderate, better shoe brands: Topsider, Keds, Saucony, and Stride Right, which was a kids brand. None of those brands was ever distributed or intended to be distributed in a Payless store. He bought that company because he didn't really want to run Payless. He wanted to build better shoe brands using Payless's incredible sourcing, supply chain, and sourcing prowess from all of those shoes we had manufactured and made. All of the big strategic decisions, this man made on his own with little or no consensus and input. Then he lorded it over on the organization. This is what we're going to do. He was a big spender on himself. I mean, you're a value chain. You say, man, when you're a value chain, back in the days when I was at Kohl's too, and we were growing so rapidly, you had this value mentality. You're pinching every penny. You're so mindful of the expenses. So that's the case in Payless when you have thin margins and low prices. But this is a gentleman who had a car service pick him up at his house and bring him to work every day and take him home. Used company money to take private jets, so a lot of travel, and if he had to suffer on an airline, he only suffered in first class. He spent a lot of company resources for charitable causes and things on things his own alma mater and or on his own causes, not things that were important to the employees of the company. He managed by fear, humiliation, and intimidation. The HR leader told me a story, the head of HR one time, that she went on vacation. She came back and everybody said, well, you better go see so-and-so. He needs to talk to you. She went to see him. He said, yeah, I just wanted you to know I restructured your organization while you were gone. He created this divisive environment, an us versus them dynamic throughout the entire company. Pitted everyone. That's a way a narcissist maintains power and control, getting everybody against each other. You know, the planning teams against the marketing teams. He only focused on the things that he liked. So I'm following this kind of chaos. Interestingly, over a year before I got recruited by Golden Gate Capital to come in to run Payless after Golden Gate purchased Payless shoes, I was contacted by the public board of Payless when it was still a public company, and this guy was, and they way before I thought about coming, they described the situation to me. They described the performance and why they were making a change. I just thought, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near that mess. And I thought, you're the people that hired them. Come on. So the Payless culture and environment that resulted from that dysfunction in leadership, it was an organization and a group of people, not a team, only unified. The only unifying part of that company was their opposition to the leader. They were unified in their misery and opposition to the way things were being done. There was a fear. The culture. Here's what the damaged culture consisted of: fear, lack of trust, every man for themselves, a lack of transparency and accountability. No one wanted to take risks. Play everything safe. Cover your rear end. Don't speak up and challenge upwards, ever. Squelch challenges coming from below. Keep everyone in line. A defensive mindset. Everybody was defensive about everything because everybody thought it could lead to my job being lost. I'm never going to accept accountability. I just need to defend what I did. No one believed the company could win. They'd lost their corporate confidence. This was a massively successful company at one time, but they'd lost the confidence. Everyone just wanted to survive, get by. Hey, I just want to be the least poor performing of all these people and teams. So there was tons of activity. People were working, but a lot of activity, but very real productive action. There was tons of data and reports, but very little information. Everybody was consumed with preparing big comprehensive decks and PowerPoint presentations, tons of analysis without any conclusion or decisions. No real action taken. I remember being in, I would have a Tuesday meeting with a pretty broad group of the senior leaders to just talk about the business, the weekend, what we're going to do. Right, this is very early on. And I would ask a question and people would say, well, it's in the Blue Book. The Blue Book was a 300-page deck they prepared every week. All the teams are spending all this time preparing the Blue Deck so everybody can say, we did it. The answer's in there. Look at the Blue Book. No, I just want to know. It's okay. Just tell me. What happened to the business? Very low levels of collaboration, very little synchronization of diverse efforts towards the vague and ambiguous goals. Everyone just doing their individual piece, disconnected from the others. And then there always are, several problem leaders that were only concerned about hanging on to their little power base and preserving the way we've always done things. Anytime you need to make changes, anytime under conditions of kind of struggle and failure, when you need to make change, there's always a group, and you got to convert them. Some of them can be converted, but there's always a group that they almost think that, no, the reason that we're here is to do things the way we always have, but it's just, no, it's not working. But that's the mindset. Some people just can't accept that the poor performance is not acceptable, that there has to be accountability. We have to be accountable for it. We're responsible for it. And things have to change. There was a strong victim mentality. Woe is me. It's not my fault. It's Amazon. It's the marketplace. It's the economy, all these things. So what is required then to effectively lead when confronted with these kind of overwhelming circumstances and to change? And how do you actually lead under that kind of chaos and disruption? First and foremost, especially in a situation like this one, but for any leader, it is critical to begin with what? Can anybody tell me the first foundational quality that I'm going to talk about for effective leadership? Character. Character. The foundational quality of effective, virtuous leadership has to begin with character. Sadly, it is distressing to me as somebody who has strived and prided themselves on and strived for just strong character and integrity and leadership. Our society is quickly losing any sense for how critical it is to identify, elevate, and prioritize character and integrity in those we choose to associate with, to lead us, whether it be our personal relationships, employers, political leaders, coaches, teachers, mentors. We've lost our sense for character. And you know what? I'm not political. I am not being political, but I'm just going to use our recent election as just an example. All sides, It's not one side or the other. It's all sides. Those politicians, because they are the most visible, probably, leaders in our society and culture. We see them on the news every night. We've just lost our sense as a country. I can see it's happening. To identify and say, no, wait, everything and who we're going to elevate has to start with their character. And because character is so important, and I was always a leader and an executive that used the phrase, you know what, there's a lot of people smarter, most people out there are smarter than me, so I always would say, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. That's the way I want to hear it. The importance of character, it necessitates defining what does it really mean. Character is the totality of an individual's moral and ethical qualities and standards that informs and governs every aspect of their actions, behavior, and decision-making, especially under conditions of extreme stress, adversity, and ambiguity. Character is a true reflection of who a person is at their core. Strong character exemplifies, and I always use this modifier, strong character exemplifies a well-formed moral conscience. We can't just have moral relativism where everybody just decides what their morality is, what's right, what's wrong about how to treat people, how to elevate dignity, how to get results. Character exemplifies a well-formed moral compass that dictates an individual's behavior and how they respond to situations, especially during times of extreme pressure or temptation. Strong character encompasses all of the virtues of humility, integrity, respect, empathy, compassion, responsibility, resilience, and courage. People of strong character consistently uphold and elevate the principles. I just talked about virtues, but the principles of honesty, fairness, charity, kindness, and the common good, regardless of the circumstances and pressure you're under. That's what makes it very difficult for many leaders who are under tremendous stress and pressure from external boards, from external constituents to perform, but they have to operate with these founding fundamental principles. Regardless of their successes, experience, intelligence, our power, leaders have got to start with character. So if you're listening to those words, if you're thinking about your own career in life, and you think you got some things to work on, now's the time to start to develop. It's a lifelong endeavor. It's a lifelong journey to develop impeccable, strong character. Strength of character in a leader is the key to building trust and earning the respect and confidence of those being led. It's also the foundation for each of us as leaders of promoting our personal growth through humble introspection, self-awareness, and a mindset of continuous improvement. Tragically, it is challenging to find strong character in most of our national and societal leaders, especially, as I said, those in politics. Sorry, politicians. And some of that may be also, somehow our media establishment likes to just highlight the lack of character. They almost celebrate it by putting it out there all the time. But so real quickly, I'm just going to give you, who does have, what are some examples? This is not exhaustive, this list, but I do want to just give you, these are just stream of consciousness for me, examples of strong character in people. Doesn't have to do with political affiliation, doesn't have to do with religious affiliation, doesn't have to do with a media network affiliation. It's all about the moral and ethical standards that inform and govern every aspect of their actions, behavior, and decisions. So here are a couple. In politics, ones that jump into my head: Abraham Lincoln, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan, two opposite sides of the aisle in the same generation, Margaret Thatcher, John McCain. In the judiciary, opposite sides of the judiciary, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia, two Supreme Court justices, but strong, impeccable character. In our faith and religion, Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis, Mother Teresa, Pastor Rick Warren. In business, that list is a little shorter, but I can think quick ones: Warren Buffett, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's got a strong sense of right and wrong and his vision of it. In the media, Walter Cronkite, Google him for you young folks, but back in the old days, you never knew what Walter Cronkite's politics were. He just reported the news, objective, fair, down the middle. Walter Cronkite, but I also think, in fairness, Anderson Cooper, he's one of the few, I think, in media, I just say, no, that guy, he's really he's fair. He's got a certain set of principles that he tries to behave against. Oprah Winfrey, I think, is one. In sports, Muhammad Ali, Tim Tebow, quick one that just immediately comes to mind. Entertainment, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers had great character. Taylor Swift, I think, is a great example of strong character. Denzel Washington, Keanu Reeves, and then in education, one of your first speakers, Father Ed Monk Malloy, impeccable character. Your own president that you are just so blessed to have here at this place, Dr. Marco Clark, impeccable character. Other of his counterparts, Dr. Bill Thierfelder at Belmont Abbey, Dr. Steve Minnis at Benedictine, Father Dave Pavanka at Franciscan University. Just some very strong examples that I give you because I'm not going to go into a list. We don't have enough time. I'd need to be here for the next, you'd be graduating by the time I got going through the list of people who lack character. So it's also important to highlight the virtue of integrity within character as that critical component of character. I feel compelled to highlight integrity because today there seems to be just such a lack of it. I'll just tell you, every time you see a political ad that is beating down the opponent, that lacks integrity. Every time somebody in politics exaggerates or misrepresents or takes out of context an opponent's words, that is a lack of integrity. Yes, we just spent $15 billion to demean and attack and show a lack of integrity to our society. So what is integrity? Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. It's the foundation of trust, respect, and credibility. It's being grounded in honesty, consistently adhering to strong, well-formed moral principles and values, even when the challenging and inconvenient. It's always doing the right thing, both publicly and privately. It's moral courage to stand by what's right, even when it's unpopular. It's being accountable for your actions, your mistakes, for the outcomes and consequences when things go wrong. It's standing by your commitments. Integrity demands consistency and alignment between our words, our values, and our actions. It's not saying one thing and doing the opposite. It leads to trust, to reliability, and to respect. Some real quick examples I'll just give you of some integrity just in the business. So it's a few quick ones. It's being objective in your personnel decisions, never playing favorites or politics when making personnel decisions. It's ensuring pay equity between the men and the women. Every company I went into had a dramatic pay disparity between men and women that I was relentless about correcting. Fairness in dealing with your vendors and partners. You know, there's always going to be a partner, a vendor in your retail business is going to screw something up. You don't have to just stick it to them just because they made a mistake. Integrity is you know what? People make mistakes. Let's work with them. Let's make it a win-win. Integrity's never making big decisions without discussing the ramifications with the people being most impacted. It's taking responsibility for your decisions that did not pay off, didn't work. I did it. I had to do it all the time. When I would get all the feedback about something we should do and then I would make that decision. If it didn't work out, you know what? I was the first to say, man, didn't work out. I own this one. It's always calling out injustice, wrongdoing, poor character, and a lack of integrity whenever necessary, despite the personal consequences. The other critical components of strong, effective, virtuous leadership all stack on the strength of character, all of them, but they have to come behind it. Has to begin there. So here are the other key pieces. There are many aspects to leadership. I can't talk about them. It's a class in and of itself, but I'm going to talk about a few. And the first one is understanding. A leader must develop an understanding of the issues, the circumstances, the state of the organizations and its challenges. It's critical to diagnose the true issues, not the just ones that you think might be issues, the causal factors in poor performance, both strategically, operationally, and culturally. This is a understanding, developing an understanding as a new leader to a new company. It is a hands-on, full immersion process in order to be effective at it. Understanding the business model, what makes it tick, the value proposition, the history, the performance, the competitive set, the competitive advantages and disadvantages, understanding the organization itself, its structure, the people, the allocation of resources, human and financial, the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities, understanding the company culture, the real values being lived, not just the ones that are posted on a nice placard in the entryway, not just the ones that the CEO talks about in speeches. I remember one of the first values of Payless on the wall when I walked in the door: integrity, treat people with respect. And the main leader of that company didn't do it a single day he was there. It's meeting with in my extensive meetings with every senior leader, meetings with the most of the teams down to the manager level, all the functional areas. This is what Dr. Clark's got. It's not one specific area or function. It's IT, it's the information technology group, it's the finance group, planning, logistics. For me, stores, marketing, real estate, legal, HR. I had merchant teams, planning teams, sourcing teams. Meetings with every functional team to discuss, to probe, to listen. You know, one of the things when I first went to Payless and I was holding these exhaustive, tedious in many cases, I don't have an aptitude for IT. I don't have an aptitude for the real estate, but I had to sit so I could add value and listen to these teams. And I would ask, and I always like having everybody from the organization, from a division in the room, not just the senior leaders. At Payless, when I went, only the senior leaders went to the meetings. It's like, how are we going to teach anybody? How are we going to develop our people? How are they going to know what's going on? How are they ever going to learn if we don't have everybody? So I would ask a question. I'd love to ask the source, the lowest person on the org chart, questions about that specific area. And I would ask, and you know what they would do? They'd look immediately to their boss. I'd say, hey, no, it's okay. I just asked the question. It's all right. You're not going to get in trouble. You can answer me. So having everybody involved with those meetings. It's walk-arounds, drop-ins, lunchroom conversations. I went to our lunchroom and ate every day. I did not have it catered in to my office. I went in the lunchroom, just picked a random table to sit and talk to people. And then talking to your partners, your overseas vendors, your external constituents. This process, it's the most challenging. It's gaining a comprehensive understanding of the organization and the problems and challenges. It just takes tremendous time and discipline as a leader. Remember that I tell you that. I'm going to talk about stamina and fortitude in a minute, but one of the things to be an effective leader, you got to have God-given energy and passion because it takes such time and discipline. It's tedious and overwhelming. I would always have to, have an extra cup of coffee when going into an IT meeting to listen about infrastructure and applications and all. It's just, that's what I owed the teams to do. But in order to get that full perspective, and you get different perspectives, different stories by talking to all these people, by immersing yourselves in it. There's some overlap, but a lot of variation. And you most always learn, though, too, that many of the people, especially in the culture I was coming into, they all think the problems are in their areas. You're asking people, and it's, hey, our world is not, you don't really need to focus here. We've cracked the code, but man, these other guys. Yeah, usually that's how I found that in that culture, people felt. It involves, beyond just those meetings, it involves independently as the leader, extensive study and analysis of the prior strategy documents, performance reports, financial results, history, business plans, identifying, so you know as the leader, hearing all these people through all those meetings, you have to triangulate all this and be able to understand yourself. Where's the reality of the shortfalls coming in? This process of understanding is also a tremendous opportunity for the leader. The process of understanding the business, the culture, is a tremendous opportunity to socialize and model the culture of transparency, humility, curiosity, and kindness. The next critical component is setting a clear and compelling vision for the company. Where do you need to go? What does the end game look like? Using all of the leaders and division heads and a third party where you have such a crisis that you need some external expertise in order to formulate these things, to develop a holistic, comprehensive strategy for the business that has full, broad-based input and participation of the leadership team. It's critical to leverage the key leaders within the company to formulate that vision and strategy. It fosters the buy-in and the commitment. You can make the decision unilaterally. There's a famous one. Back in 2010, 11, 12, Ron Johnson went from Apple to become the CEO of JCPenney. And he didn't talk to anybody at JCPenney about what the problems were, what they need to do. He was the guy that kind of built out the whole Apple store for Apple. He did Apple retail. And he came to JCPenney, a 110-year-old retailer, and thought he was going to make it Apple stores. Didn't listen to anybody, brought in a bunch of cronies from outside. It had no buy-in. All the people at Penny, they didn't think they had nothing to change, but they knew a lot of what he was implementing. It's a classic, it was not going to work. Classic example of a leader, highly touted leader, coming in, and guess what? In the next 18 months, they dropped 40% of their business and went into a financial and liquidity crisis. And he was out the door in 18 months. So it's also part of setting that clear and compelling vision. It's creating and telling that story of where we are, why, and where we need to go and how. That is critical to getting the buy-in of everybody, because when people start to hear and see the correlation between here's how we're performing and these are the causal factors and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, they become vested in that. It's specifying how all the functional areas, not just those guys over there, everybody is going to support the key strategic initiatives and that ultimate vision. Clearly defining what is involved to achieve successful execution of the strategy across the company in terms of people, process, culture. The vision and strategy has to be intuitive. It must address the real causes of decline and identify that critical white space of opportunity that has to be exploited. It's not a document. It's not a deck that everybody puts on their desk and then moves on with the way we've always done things. It's a living guide. It's a living map for what and how we need to do things. Then explicitly defining this, you can start modeling it before you explicitly define it. You can explicitly define a few components the day you step in the door. But it's more important to first understand and learn before explicitly detailing it. But defining and modeling the company culture, detailing those values and behaviors that will define how the organization and every individual in it behaves, operates, and interacts both internally and externally. It's the core values. What are those? What are the core values? Integrity, respect, creativity, innovation, cost consciousness, having fun. That's one. That's an important one. Being entrepreneurial, accountable, collaborative, transparent. Teaching and developing is a value, a core value, especially when you're leading so many young people. Results focus, kindness, candor. Leadership style and standards, service leadership. I have always modeled and believed passionately in service leadership. Serving and supporting the teams to remove the obstacles and provide the resources so that they can perform their jobs and achieve their objectives and those of the company. The communication styles, performance appraisal process is a big part of the culture. You know, performance appraisal process, in 3 of the companies I went to after leaving May department stores, 3 of them, you would think that the performance appraisal process was a process for people to negotiate a better rating and raise. No, it's a way for you to focus on not only your accomplishments, but more importantly for your own development, is to focus on what do I need to do better? What do I need to do to become more effective? What do I need to be able to contribute more to the organization? So that's another very important aspect. Culture is the hardest thing to change because it develops over years and years. When it's bad, it develops over years and years of bad behavior, of just bad examples. And it takes time and sometimes a lot of pain to change culture. It's the most frustrating thing for me always. It's more frustrating for me to see progress moving in the culture than it is to have the business respond slowly. It must be powerfully modeled by the leadership, not in a speech, in a talk for a week, day in, day out, in every interaction across the company. So from day one, leaders can start, as I said, you don't have to wait till that's framed up. You can start to model that. There's nothing more important of setting the tone. So I'm going to give you a couple of those quick, here are my thoughts on how to start setting that tone early on. And what is it to start modeling that culture? Want to know one of the most simple ones? Stop cursing. Clean up the language. Cursing and bad language, it's not only is it unacceptable and is it unprofessional, it is offensive to so many people. The language I would hear from people, it's disrespectful. It's never appropriate. Forget the fact that it's very unchristian. But everywhere I ever worked, even from the earliest days of my career, over a very short period of time, just because I use some words like daggone it and other words like that, but people knew that dude never cusses. Even when he gets really angry, he never cusses. But you know what? All of a sudden, everybody around you starts to be more aware of their own language. People, and then, hey, it might be 6 months in and somebody screams out an F-bomb, and then they look at you and they're like, oh, sorry. You know, people become much more aware of it. It creates a whole different atmosphere when the language is professional. No inappropriate humor. This is another way. You just know, we're just going to purge that. We're not going to be politically correct on everything or woke or so paranoid about it, but just, you know what, no off-color stuff. We don't need it. Listening to other points of view attentively before inserting your own. Respecting and valuing the other points of view. Speaking, always speaking to other people in the room with respect, even when you disagree or when the disagreement flares up. Having a charitable disposition, just being happy and joyful. Even and especially during the times where everybody's feeling the pressure and the stress. Showing a genuine interest and concern for other people, knowing their names. Just, you know, and it's, you know, you can't spend every meeting and every time you're just passing people, you can't, there's some limitations, but it's generally having an interest in what's going on with other people when you have those opportunities. Expressing confidence, optimism, and hope in the company and the people. And then living a low-cost lifestyle. This is especially for people who are in, the value space of retail. I'm sure it's true of people in universities as well, both personally and at work. So and I always say, at Payless, I had the worst, and at Kohl's and at Payless, at Shopko, I had the worst car in the parking lot. I drove a Chevy Impala. I had a house in just a regular neighborhood, not a luxury neighborhood. I wear a Timex Indiglo watch. I do not have a Rolex. You know what? I go get my lunch in the cafeteria every day. I fly coach class. I felt just a commitment. I'm going to live so far below the per diem. Golden Gate Capital gave me this massive transition, per diem when I was moving from Green Bay to, I spent a fraction of it. My travel, I always came in under the budget. And if I had, one of my kids or somebody join me for dinner, I paid for their dinner. I never submitted that on an expense to the company to pay for. So all of those little ways are ways that you can model that, and there is another quote, because I'm going to segue quickly here into humility and then wrap so that we can take some questions. But Christ said in Matthew 11:29, he said, "Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart." Learn from me. I'm gentle and humble of heart. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over on them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant. Those words we all have to take to heart, every one of us, so that someday when you're all presidents of universities or senior executives or leading companies or your own company, you remember that. That's what he told each one of us. Demonstrating humility. What does that mean? Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Understanding my own limitations, being vulnerable, listening closely to learn, and recognizing and valuing the value, worth, experience, and contribution of others, showing a willingness to learn, grow, and improve. One of the things that so many arrogant, overconfident leaders do when they're coming into a crisis situation where things are broken, not working well, they immediately come in and they're so focused on how to improve it, how it's got to be turned around. You got to be mindful. These people have been here pouring their life energy into it. Yeah, maybe they had a bad leader, set bad direction. But you got to be respectful of the fact you can't come in and act like everybody's an idiot. That's what Ron Johnson did. He basically disrespected the whole company. He came in, got rid of all of his C-suite, brought all of his buddies from the last place. What do you think the organization's thinking? Guy doesn't value us. He doesn't care about us. We're not smart enough. Oh, we haven't been doing well enough. We're not Apple. Yeah, it's disrespectful, even in the understanding and learning process, the way you're asking the questions. You have to acknowledge the success they've achieved. I did that all the time at Payless. I always was talking about, you guys have built the largest, most powerful value footwear chain on the planet. I gave them credit. Yeah, we're not doing well recently. We will, but it's important to remember that. That's humility. It's a heightened self-awareness, especially for the CEO. It's a rejection of arrogance, never seeking attention or validation. Check your ego at the door every morning. Actions always have to be guided by sincerity versus a desire for recognition and validation of our experience. Always showing gratitude, even in a spiritual sense. I always would say, I'm not afraid. I'm blessed to be working with such amazing people. I'm grateful to God for your service. One of the things I just felt passionately about, that I would feel ashamed to see people's humble reactions to it. But at Payless, we had 4,300 stores. We had so many people in the stores that had been working there up to 40 years. So, I mean, we're talking hundreds of people. I felt compelled that I told my assistant, I said, I want every 5, 10, 15, all the way up through 40. Every 5 years, I couldn't do it for every year, but from 10 years through 40, bring me a list of every store associate who is celebrating one of those universities and their phone number. Oh my gosh, it would have hundreds of names. I would just have to, in between meetings, try to get 3 or 4 of those calls in. I would call and personally thank those. I felt compelled to do it. These people are breaking their backs out there for us. I would call those people and personally say, hey, it's Paul Jones. A lot of times people thought it was a joke. People would be, or I'd get Mary Jane to get them on the phone and they'd be, no, are you kidding? Who is this? You know what? No, they just weren't you. No, I just want to tell you, I value the fact that for 30 years, you've been getting up and going to work here for us. And then in the corporate office, I walked around to every one of those offices for those anniversaries, the 5 years, 10, 20, and I just sit in the office and just say, yeah, Merrill Lee, I just got to come and tell you, I am so grateful. I meant it. I felt it, you know, and it's just such a great opportunity. But that's gratitude. That's real gratitude. Yes, I'd have the little placard, you know, and you just sign it. No, I'd write a personal note to every one of those people. It took a ton of time. Oh my gosh. There were times I got so far behind and I'd take a day and that's all I would do is make those calls or make those visits. I'd just say, nope, I'm going to get to a bunch of these people. But I'd write, they're owed that. Accepting criticism, negative feedback with grace and not defensiveness. Acting, more importantly, acting on the criticism. Hey, I mentioned this to him and he changed it. He's not doing that anymore. Demonstrating your adaptability and willingness to change. Keeping focused on yourself, not on others. What others need to do. What do I need to do? It's not thinking less of yourself, but thinking less of yourself. Detachment, other-centeredness. Acting with compassion and fairness, always mindful of how your decisions affect other people. Never fearing admitting when you're wrong, but just having a balanced sense of confidence. Humility doesn't mean lacking confidence. It's a mature security in your abilities. Being approachable, accessible, relatable. So these characteristics of authentic humility won't only foster your own continued personal growth, but they'll make you more apt to learn from your mistakes, accept needed advice from others, will help you to develop deeper relationships. They'll make you a better leader and collaborator, a better problem solver. It also fosters greater harmony and collaboration through your organization as it sets aside divisions and power struggles. Humility demonstrates inner strength and wisdom, confidence, security, and authenticity. Being a consistent user of the sacrament of reconciliation has made me a better, more humble leader. It's made me a better coworker. Hopefully it's made me a better husband, a better father. It's made me more collaborative, less confrontational, more self-aware, and more introspective. So all of this requires authentic humility and a spirit and culture of detachment. All of these things, they're so easy. It's so easy in these roles to become enamored with some of the perks and whatnot. But this behavior of humility, of detachment, austerity, it's highly countercultural, especially in the retail industry where it's all about acquiring and enjoying more. But as leaders, it's most critical that we model the culture and behavior that is expected from everyone. And finally, instilling that culture requires strict enforcement and compliance. Enforcement of the standards and having consequences for not complying. We had many people who had phenomenal experience and skill set. They had incredible track records of success. But by gosh, they would not embrace that culture. And I owed it to the teams that worked for them not to tolerate it. I had to make some of those tough calls. And some people think I'm insulated and protected by my talent, experience, and results. No, you are not. You will lead this way or you will go do it somewhere else. And then, I alluded to it. One of the things that's just so difficult in leading these ways that I'm talking about, with the understanding and that due diligence, with setting the vision, with being mindful and all of the personal time that you have to spend, it requires incredible stamina. If you're going to be a leader, stay in shape, stay physically fit. The physical strength and capacity to sustain prolonged physical or mental effort, resisting fatigue and fortitude, the inner moral, mental, and emotional strength to stay strong and calm under emotional pressure, withstanding fear, difficulty, and failure. It's tedious and exhausting. It is a tedious and exhausting attention to the process and details. But having endurance and strength in your persistence through physical and mental adversity requires a certain God-given level of just passion and energy and positive, hopeful disposition, which is a lot more than just cheerleading. It's living it out every day. So with that, guys, I'm just going to wrap. I actually went a little bit over how long I wanted to talk, but as you can see, I get wrapped up in it, and I could teach you. I could come in here and talk about it for days and days. But with that, I'll open it up. And
Outstanding. Yeah. Bit of a round of applause. Yeah. Paul, thank you. Yeah, grab some water, relax a little bit, and we'll take some questions here. Wow. So a couple things I want to share, just maybe to illuminate here. First off, I mean, you just got a master class in leadership. And especially as you spoke about it, I think so graciously, passionately, the importance of the inner self, of the virtuous, those virtues, the discipline, the attention to our own selves, right? Acting with humility, acting with integrity, and the character. So when I first met Paul, he had just started at Payless, and I was in my first presidency at that time. And I want to say this as we lead into some questions. I flew out to Kansas to the Payless headquarters, Fortune 100 company, billions and billions of dollars of sales. And I had this image in my mind that I would just see this immaculate, beautiful building. I would step into an office that was like all Carrera marble. And what I found was something much simpler, much humbler. And I found an individual who manifested that humility. An office that had used office furniture in it. Right? We walked into the warehouse in the manufacturing plant where where all the manufacturing of the shoes was happening, where people were just in long lines, and they were making these shoes. He walked through that plant and knew every single person's name, and this was a mentoring moment for me that he didn't probably know that I was witnessing and learning from. He not only knew their name, he greeted them sincerely. He knew about their families, asked about how their kids were doing as we made our way through that plant. And then we made our way back to his office. And one of the keen observations that I made in his office was that he had a wall with prayer cards and religious icons and relics and messages and notes, and I started and pictures, and he had a photograph with I think Pope St. John Paul II, and there was a shelf maybe 4 or 5 feet off of the wall, off the ground, and I asked him to tell me a little bit more about all of this, and he said, "Well, this is where I come and I pray. I kneel right there at that shelf, and I pray every day." In a company like Payless, which is publicly traded, secular, right? You've got to be careful about expressing those values. And so immediately, this was a model for me, a mentor for me that I've remained very close with over the years. And through his work with Franciscan University of Steubenville, Paul helped me to prepare for my interview here to be president at Holy Cross College, because he led the search for the new president at Franciscan University, and I wanted to learn from that experience. So whether he knew it or not, he was witnessing to me what leadership was all about. And now we just heard that expressed so passionately. He's given this talk at the University of Oregon School of Business, University of Arkansas School of Business, so many other places. We just got a chance to hear it right here, and I'm just so inspired by what we heard. So I know that you even had some questions prepared if there were no questions, but something tells me, we've got a reception right out here, yeah. So, but what kind of questions do you all have? What you heard today, what kind of questions do you have? Yep, Michael.
Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Jones. Michael Mosley, freshman here at Holy Cross.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. One of my questions was just, you talked a lot about character and a lot about adversity. Has there been a point in time where you faced an adversity or a challenge in which helped shape your character to where you are today?
One instant?
I mean, I know you probably had many, but maybe just one that has really stuck out with you.
There are many. Let me think. There's one. There was one mentor I actually worked for in the business early in my career. May Company, which is now Macy's, where I started my career. I had this. He was a very important mentor to me, but he was insanely requiring and challenging and overwhelming, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he was just overbearing. And he's actually right now the CEO of Kohl's, and he promoted me way too fast. I wasn't ready for the role he put me in, but he just felt strongly about me and my potential for whatever reason. And I was so stressed out. This guy was putting me under so much pressure. He was not gentle and meek and humble and kind. He was nasty and harsh, and I owe him so much for how he developed me. But the way he was managing me was so overwhelming that it caused me to go outside and go walking downtown Portland, Oregon. And I happened to stumble on the downtown chapel, which had a Brother Andre cafe feeding the homeless. And I went, and when I arrived, by God's grace, Mass was just starting, a noon Mass that day. And for that 20 minutes, I just felt this, all the overwhelming stress and pressure just melted away. I just felt this sense of peace and grounding and protection. And so that event, that particular moment of where at 6 a.m, he would walk in my office and say, "What happened to this business yesterday?" I'd say, "Tom, I just got in. I'll let you know." And he was back at 6:20 saying, "Have you found out yet?" And so that day, though, that caused me, where the Holy Spirit prompted me to go out, take a walk, blow off some of that stress, started for me a deeper conversion into my faith, a deeper grounding into my faith. I had always been in it, but we're all on a journey. We all ebb and flow in our faith journey. It is the absolute, no question reason for my success, my grounding in faith. My being grounded. And that day that I went to that chapel, started going to daily, that was a huge moment of conversion for me and deepening of my faith. And guess what? The irony, it's led to all my secular success. I had these phenomenal companies I had the great fortune of working for. May Department Stores, it was the Marine Corps of retailing. It was excellence personified in retail. Kohl's, when it was growing, it was one of the disruptors in retail. So I got all of these opportunities because I really started to act and behave in a way, practice my faith more fervently, reading the gospel every day. And that was the most pivotal moment for me that caused me to start to be so focused on those components. Does that answer your question? Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Eli?
All right, howdy. First off, thank you again for coming and giving such great advice. You have so many great values to share, that you have the characteristics and just overall message of how to be a great leader.
Thank you, Eli.
But going into that, I guess applying it to us as college students right now, before we even get into the business world and real life sort of things, what would be a great way to start this continuous process that we have to endure?
Okay, now, so I'm going to give you a few real quick, and I can hang out afterwards, and I'll also get to Dr. Clark a list, because over the years, and I just keep updating it. Literally, I've had this list. I started it about 20 years ago, and I keep refining it and adding to it. But I have it's not from a book. It's not from the internet. It's just my own reflecting on my experience. So I'm going to give you a couple quick ones. It's called, this is just a list, and this is a culled down. This is kind of 4.5 pages. But a couple of the big ones. It's leadership advice for young leaders. So you can start this afternoon when you walk out of here, when you go to your part-time job, your temporary job. The first thing is going to be develop early on, right now, a clear definition and development plan for your own character, for your own set of moral and ethical qualities that you want to live by and that you are committed to acting by. How do you want to be? How will you live out your values in professional life? What is your personal brand? What do you want your personal brand to be? Live with integrity. Never compromise it. If it means getting fired from your job, get fired. Live with integrity. Speak up against the injustice and the unfairness when you see it. Doesn't matter. Take the risk, but live with integrity. Always. Privately, publicly, when you see it. That doesn't mean you have to go be self-righteous and pointing everything out, but the big wrongs, our business, our world in general, and business in particular, it's full of arrogance, narcissism, egos. There are so many more examples. It's 50-1 of arrogance, narcissism, and ego versus humility. In my career in retail, it's a very materialistic business. Study first, embrace and embody the virtue of humility. It's one of the rarest virtues that you see in people. Authentic humility, like some of the things that I was describing. Know your limitations. Don't think less of yourself, but thinking less of yourself. Thinking of yourself less. Be countercultural. Our Catholic, Christian, traditional values are being pushed out of every aspect of modern culture. We are being overcome by moral relativism, a dulling of even our awareness of what's right and what's wrong, what's good, what's evil, what is character and integrity. So the ones I just gave you. Don't curse. You can't believe what a huge differentiator it's going to make for you and your personal brand. Stop cursing. Clean up the language. Be kind, charitable. Even when you're having a bad day, be happy. Show some joy. It's a sense of gratitude. No, there's somebody who does that. Your problems, they're real. You have a right to feel. But you know what? Be countercultural. Show some of that joy and charity. Be compassionate. Don't gossip. Don't get involved with that, talking about other people. You want to be countercultural and you want to start to establish yourself as a leader. Be the person. You know what? I notice Eli, who never, ever gets in on that when we're thrashing people. When we're talking about everybody's shortcomings, Eli never jumps in on that. Never get caught up in negativity and cancerous people. There's always going to be a problem where you are. Things don't run well. Some of the leaders aren't good. Don't be one of the people commiserating with everybody. For the first year of my career, I was working in a branch store as a department manager. I had this elderly German stock woman who was so angry and just bitter, and she used to tell me, and I came into work every day and I was filled with passion and energy, and Sophia told me every day, oh boy, you're going to learn how this place sucks. This place sucks. You haven't learned yet. And every day that was fuel to my, I thought, nope, every morning, Sophia, I just came in, I was just gung-ho every day. Don't get caught up in the cancer. Don't be a cancer. If you catch yourself, oh yeah, here I am commiserating, just zip it. Walk away from it. Be candid and constructive when evaluating your own performance. Don't ever go into a performance review thinking that you're negotiating for a better raise. Be countercultural. Be the person who goes in, hey, yes, you can show, hey, here are some of the things I've accomplished that I feel really good about, but hey, you have a list twice that long. Here are the things that I got to work on. Here's what I didn't do well. Here's the way I want to do better. And can you help me to do that? Just a couple other ones. I'm looking for, this is a big one. Take ownership. These are all components of leadership for young leaders. Take ownership for your own development. Don't wait for everybody to teach you or show you. Own your development. Be a student. When you walk out of here and you graduate, don't ever stop being a student. Go above and beyond to teach yourself, to learn, to become more effective. Be resourceful. Wherever you're working, learn as much as you can about the whole company, not just your function, the company, the performance, the results, the strategy. Be curious, be intellectually curious about all those things. Another one, take an interest in other people in the company, not even just in your function. If you're in sales, learn, reach out to the other people, have lunch with them in other divisions. Show that interest. Hey, how does your area work? What are you guys working on? What do you guys do? Own that. Here, and this is I'll leave it on this one. This is a huge one especially, I'm sorry, for the young generation. Don't rob yourself of the benefit of experiencing fully over the hump adversity and challenges. Have fortitude through adversity. If you need a change, if you're going to get to a time, every one of you in your career where things are not going well, you don't like the company, you got a bad boss. That's the best. Remember that quote I gave you earlier about sometimes we can't see God's grace. We can't be grateful for the adversity that he puts in front of us. Do not quit. Don't change jobs. Don't avoid that adversity. You work through it. If you need a change of job, wait until things get better to leave. Because the only thing you do is rob yourself of the adversity of learning a new threshold of managing stress, overcoming obstacles. And in the younger generation, it's just as soon as things kind of get tough, it must be time for me to go and do something else. So those are a few. I have some more, and I'll leave some with Dr. Clark as well.
Thank you. So, and on that note, so of course, we know the motto of the Congregation of Holy Cross, and we'll wrap up with this: Ave Crux Spes Unica, hail the cross, our only hope. Right? It's not the cross itself, but it's the crosses that we bear and deal with in life. Hail the hardship, hail the pain, hail the suffering, right? Hail the cross for what God promises is it is our only hope, right? So Ave Crux Spes Unica. Thank you, Paul, for being here today. We're going to be in the lobby if anybody wants to talk personally. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great week. Reflection, again, 1 to 3 pages by next Friday. Next week, we will have with us the leader of a nonprofit, a Catholic nonprofit, Angela Maloney, just a wonderful human being that you're really going to learn a lot. She's going to talk about the power of discernment, right? And that's your own prayerful view and preparation for your future. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.